Hello world. This is a surprise live broadcast. I thought I would bring this to you today in order to share my lunch break. And while sharing my lunch break with you, because I'm working from home, like so many of you, I figure I would reach out in my already introverted way. Pseudo-social introverted? Oops. Pseudo-social introverted. So things like YouTube live streaming appeals to me because I already show my mistakes. And I'm full of them. I'm beyond that self-deprecating stage. Don't even need to bullet point that. You can hear my cat in the background, and in times like these, there's really no shame in the rough edges. Anyone who watches those Disney animation process things, where you see the pencil sketches cutting back and forth with a finished thing, knows that there is much to be learned in the unedited takes, but it takes patience, much to be learned in raw footage, but it ain't easy. But I guess a lot of you have some maybe surprise time on your hand, working from home too, looking for some distraction. And, I figured I'd help you get over the hump. I like to help. And I'll help you get over the Python hump. Learning Python hump. That's the main thing. But I am really not thinking about your needs so much. Your needs as an audience are actually secondary. I collect a paycheck and fit these things in as I can, while staying as above the table proprietary as I can as well. That's why I'm doing this on my lunch break. So I know I have audio problems, and I'll check my audio from time to time. I do have these headphones I can hold up, and I know the audio is coming from my actual laptop, the recording, so I'm in pretty good shape. It can go crazy a bit, and people have told me that, and I'm working on it. It's just not the time to go out shopping microphones right now. So let's get to work on laying out this project and stuff. First of all, it is not Monday, March 16th. A lot of you are looking at that going, wait, if this is a live broadcast, that can't be right. Well, indeed it's not. And I am going to quit out of this for a second and type clock, which will run my script, which updates my clock, so that when I jump back into my journal and do my keyboard shortcut for a new journal entry, it'll actually have the correct day. So now this will make more sense, right? Live broadcasting, broadcasting without a net. So if I do it, you see it. There's a few lines here before the entry from yesterday actually begins. I like to do it like this. I center my cursor. I center the screen at where I'm typing, and then get rid of the bottom entry. That makes for a pretty good, let me type and talk to you, because my typing will sort of be in the middle of the screen. This is the journal, which is the leftmost window in a ribboned series of windows that I work with. I love the way that Windows 10 and the Macintosh have all settled on this horizontal left-right sort of flipping, which the Amiga had too. It never felt left-right. It was Amiga N, and you could scroll through your windows almost instantaneously. When the Mac finally got virtual screens right, it did this left-right swooshing. And so here I am doing it too on my now nearly 4-year-old Windows platform. I am working, if you're interested in my equipment, I'm on a Microsoft, they call it, I want to type PowerBook, right? All their marketing, but this is a Surface Book 2. And it's quite awesome. You know, being on this hardware, and it's, by the way, it's awesome because it's this portfolio physical form model, not really a laptop. And it's sitting on my lap, actually for real, sitting on my lap. This is what I'm live streaming on. Live streaming equipment. I don't know if I'll even mark down all this stuff. I'll do a ZG there to add it to my dictionary. And being on this hardware is why I'm on Windows 10, which in turn is why I'm on WSL2, the Windows subsystem for Linux. And I am a fan. And I have to continually check for things like resetting my clock. This is one downside. They're working on it, I'm sure, and they released a patch, which was my last video. A lot of you have probably seen it and gone, what? You know, this means nothing for me. But it means something for a lot of people. It means something for we who are on the not quite so bleeding, but still somewhat painful edge of tech, waiting for Microsoft to formally release Linux with Windows. And this changes everything. And that's the platform I'm already on as my preferred and actually chosen platform. I could type this all, but I'll spare you and try and get to some of the work. This is the build up. So, you know, I only do this sort of live cast is because I like to share what I can. And I work in a sort of old school way that will interest some people. And I know it's a little painful to watch sometime without the video editing, but I figure embracing this live platform, I will provide the perfect excuse for the unedited rough edge experience. So as you see, I like to flip from left to right in my screens to see what's going on. This is still confusing me a little bit in that the broadcast software from the YouTube side, because there's a couple of broadcast pieces, there's a web page that you go to where it is the gateway to actual streaming, but it's taking a stream that's being provided by OBS. Forget what it stands for, but broadcasting, I guess, Open Broadcasting Studio. And this is where I make all my decisions. through the advanced setting here, I left my microphone on, or my headset on monitor, so I can lift these up occasionally and listen. There's a little bit of a screech, as if feedback in the background of audio, but it's not unlivable. Now, what I can do in order to cut down background noise when I'm not talking is I can go into filters and I can add a new filter. I've been experimenting with noise gate. I just add it and it goes almost totally silent until I start talking. But it'll click back and forth like this. Better and less painful to listen to? Probably. That's the off. It has to stay higher, clearly. I hate these tiny sliders. This is one of the things about the open source world. Everything remains kind of a video game. You should just hit defaults. That's a good setting. I'll accept it. And I'll keep it running like this so that I know when I start to talk, I have to do it suddenly and then keep streaming my audio without too many pauses. Then I'll stop. Okay. Oh, YouTube is not receiving enough. Oh, but my concurrent users is going up. I'm going to trust that the performance of my laptop will catch up and allow the stream to be smooth, especially when most of the screen ceases to move, as it does here. This is the wonderful discovery I'm extracting from a prior project. Not even going to scroll. I just am going to take this piece and create a whole new repo, not Surveyor. We're going to create a new repo up here on my GitHub. That also is the code for the crawler that I'll be extracting and attempt to put into concurrent mode. And in the process, actually simplify this code. That's the whole crawler, by the way. So I'll be copying and pasting this somewhere else, or not copying and pasting and just duplicating files. Well, we'll get to that. Okay, I'm in the old project directory, d. Now there is a Python SEO directory here, which is how this project started. But the name of the library I've been gravitating towards, I got to take audio monitor off, very confusing, is MLSEO. So I'm going to make directory MLSEO. Inside that directory, cd MLSEO, I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to make it a Git repository while I'm here, Git init. So when you make a directory in what I'm using as right now as GitHub, right, as my home, because this is not the normal home that is given to you by the Windows subsystem for Linux. It gives you a nice clean home. But that home is in a very unusual spot. I have a command that I created that can do fun little tricks like this. These are the types of things you folks who are jumping onto the Python bandwagon under Windows are going to want to be doing too. So what's going on here is that I know that I'm onto something big because you will be jumping on the Python bandwagon. now or soon. Why? Because Python is the new lingua franca of tech. Like Perl was before it for Unix install scripts. But automation is so much more than it was before. And the language that just fits everything, nearly everything, is Python, which is named after Monty Python and not the snake. It is therefore a much differently vibed language than you think. You will soon meet the list dict and tuple, and you will be changed forever because you will begin to naturally think in process automation terms, like speaking your own primary natural language. English. Let me. And that should probably be a paragraph, so it shall be. And I'll teach you Vim. A whole bunch more, so much more, but you know, you got to start somewhere, you got to do something, and this is the story of just everyday workflow and concurrency. What is Open doing? Well, I can type profile and show you my bash underscore profile, technically dot bash underscore profile, that gets run every time I open a new Unix, Linux terminal, which I do easily here under the Microsoft Unified Terminal program. So if I check another one, this welcome to Lunderwand you see here is really just, oh, I do it right here. I guess I have it sort of prepared, this command. There. So you understand a little bit of what you're looking at. Each one of these is what is patterned after Unix shells or Unix terminals, but really in this case is a local console connection to a Ubuntu 18.04 virtual machine that's running on the system. The first one I started was like a boot up of it, and it's been running in this lightweight hypervisor, Microsoft hypervisor mode. And bottom line is, you don't need to know much about it except for the fact it works and it's really nice. And it works well in conjunction with this virtual screen mode, so that you can open separate multi-tabbed terminals on different windows and get between them like this. And it's really nice, some with different size fonts for the different things you need to do. That explains a little bit about the environment I'm using, and it doesn't take too much to get here. So the platform I'm advocating is, this whole thing is the general advocation of a stack. It's not really a stack, it's more like a toolbox, tool set, which is Linux, Python, vim, and git. With these simple 4 tools, you can tackle nearly any problem. Of course, it's an ambiguous statement, and people might say it doesn't say much because Linux is so very much. Do I advocate learning sed and awk? You should know what they are. But no. Use the best tool for the job. Linux is the best tool to have a code execution context. So what does that mean, huh? A place to run your code. Maybe even control the entire machine your code is running on. So you see, it's very meta. You need to know enough Linux to get a Linux system running. And to get your code, or the code you want, running on that machine, right? That's how much Linux you need to know and why Linux comes first in the stack. You don't need to know everything. So, you know, these windows here that I use all the time are just machines that I regularly log into to do things. And you'll hear stuff going on in the background. I used to worry about that, right? But one thing now with what's going on is there's going to be a lot of this, right? So I listen. And am I satisfied with my audio? Not perfect, but at least you don't have to suffer. Okay, so I was demonstrating how to get to home. We did that open. Now I want to get back to my GitHub location. One of my shortcuts is GitHub. Pop, I'm back there. That's why I can treat it as a home location so easily, and it doesn't really bother me that it's not that / location. I received a great comment on my YouTube channel, so I do listen and read every comment. Guess I can bring that up here. I think I'm giving away anything personal. Go in here. Get the latest information. Dismiss. We are in interesting times. And here, I can go into your channel, perhaps my comment, or use Studio. I know there will be comments. I'll let you see the back end, what a publisher sees on their back end. Now, I'm pretty small beans as far as these YouTube publishers go. By the way, I'm not showing my talking head on this video because there's really no need to have that extra bandwidth going on. I'll do my contribution of low bandwidth stream. Keep you occupied and keep your mind occupied while not hogging up too much bandwidth. But yeah, there's comments. Yeah, from Hans Hoffman. Easier to respond to your audience. We're gradually introducing smart reply suggestions. They're even telling you how to talk to your folks. So Hans Hoffman, this is how I talk to you. I put you into my live stream. I should export that and then use the Windows variable instead of the full path, so that this location only adding this part. that'll make a variable in my envs that I can use elsewhere. It's a trick that I don't often use, but I do like using these variables, so why not take some advice of one of my YouTube audience? I guess you guys are audience, followers, supporters. No, I don't ask for money yet. I should do the Patreon thing, make you guys pay for this. But that is certainly a environment type thing. That's why this is called environment. I know the fact I can do things like this, and now any new bash window I have, I can use Windows, or not Windows, I think of that $ symbol as Windows, right? It's almost a subconscious joke. Any new ones I make, I can say CD $ win, CWD, no, it's PWD, home/Miguel. Yeah, I don't know. I'll experiment with this. What did I export? I'm probably doing, oh, capital WIN. That's why. Yep, there we go. So I have an environment variable. I can use this whenever I want now to get to this as an alternative to homing. At least I can feel like I'm going home, but I get home by typing that. I use aliases instead of environment variables. But yeah, you can use an environment variable as a shortcut, or you can use an alias. There's a lot of options here. But thank you for that. It's good to know there are countless places where environment variables in that bash environment could really be useful. So everyone who follows me in my humble little channel, feel free to reach out to me on comments. I listen to you. You sometimes significantly improve my workflow. Thank you to everyone. And even those I've rubbed the wrong way in the past. I should appreciate every YouTube follower and person who interacts with me, and everyone has something to say. And sometimes the reasons I do things are because of the tools that I'm on. I loved Python, and I loved it while I was on 2.7, and I was using all this concurrency postback stuff that is available out there. And someone started criticizing me for how I was using the yield statement, and I was trying to explain to them the streaming stuff I was doing, how the yield was not good enough. And it turned out I needed to get onto Python 3. Whatever to get the concurrency story correct. So let me stop doing divergence. You're probably interested in the concurrency thing. So this here is the result of a crawl of a site where I came back with 106 links, and this is visiting each one of those links. This is the magic code that I will be exporting, but it is referring to a list that got created by a crawl, so I'm going to be lifting the crawl as well. So let me just start transposing this code over into that ML SEO location in a way that's sort of familiar to me. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be showing you all this in Jupyter Notebook. I guess I will. So instead of doing it the way I was about to, I'm going to go to GitHub, and I created an ML SEO directory. I'm going to start with a notebook. The environment I'm in here is Jupyter Lab. Jupyter Lab is Jupyter Notebook with a different skin and a different way that its components talk to each other. When your main component is a Jupyter Notebook, things are much the same as they are in Jupyter Notebook, and you just have this extra file navigation tab where you can do things like seeing your running code. So I'm going to go to GitHub ML SEO. I'm going to try and add a new notebook. You'll notice you're going to be drawn to that plus. brings you to a launcher from which you can make the new notebook. Bam! I have a new notebook called Untitled inside the ML SEO directory, which I could go over here. By the way, I'd like to switch this and this. And this is where Windows specific API and muscle memory comes into play. And while not perfect, it's actually not terrible. So now this terminal is here and that terminal is there. And it's going to be easier to pop over here where I can go GitHub, and then I can CD into ML SEO, then I can do an LS. And there's the untitled file. If I rename it here, when I rename it here, I'm going to call that ML SEO. And now eventually I'll have a .py file. And this is when I acknowledge, if you were on Visual Studio Code, an alternative environment for running your Python. So lesson 1, there's context for running your Python. This is assuming you know you want to learn Python. You've been led down this path and you're like, okay, where do I start? Lesson 1, there is context for running your Python. What does that mean? Well, what it means that you can run it from a Windows command. No, command.exe. I guess that's what it really is. People refer to it as CMD. You can run it, and that, by the way, is using python.exe, which is the official reference specification from python.org, and it's aka CPython, which is not to be confused with all these other Pythons that are out there. It's the real Python, as invented by and promoted by Guido van Rossum, its creator. It's now become an organization that does it. And so other contexts you can run it. You can run it from inside Jupyter Notebook, which is very similar technically. And what I mean is that Jupyter Notebook uses the Python, but is never quite caught up with the python.org distro, with python.org. So in other words, you can be on Python 3.8 via going to a command window, CMD, and just type Python. And if you're up to date on your Windows, this will jump you over to the Microsoft Store and initiate the installation of Python on your system, so that you can, in fact, type Python, get the interactive command line of Python 3.8.2. That's very new, right? And create Python by, creating a text file. I think I did this trick before to do a hello.py, but you create a text file like echo. I'll try it again. You can never do this trick too often. So the echo command from the command line works like this. So you can just echo hi, but you can also echo the same thing. Now here's some of the advantages of supporting single tick marks and double tick marks in your language. You can do tricks like this when you can't use the double quotes because of something that a wrapper language is doing. Now you can just do that, but I'm going to be doing that to the output of a program called hello.py. Now there's a file called hello.py in the same home location where I'm at, and I can say Python, which is the same as saying python.exe, and I can give it a local file name. That is, print hello world into hello.py. I was able to run the file, but there's going to be something wrong inside that file. So I can't even use Vim because this is a command. This is one of those locations. Let me think about that first. Echo print hello world to hello.py. And running that from Python. That looks correct to me. / well, it's Windows, so it has the right file. It feels like it's running. That should say hello world. Well, anyway, we're live, so I'll debug that later. But this is another execution context where you're using the locally installed most latest version that is provided by the python.org people that Microsoft has done a very good job with on making sure that the Python installation story goes very smoothly from them. You won't see your command line window quite like this, the way you're seeing it here on my system, because I'm running it under the context of the Windows Unified Terminal, which again, you get from the Microsoft Store. You just go in there and you type terminal and you'll find this program I'm using that gives you a place to run your Unix instances, PowerShell, command line window, and this new Azure Cloud Shell, which I'm sure is like logging into a Azure Cloud instance using SSHing into a remote machine. Anyway, I rambled. Make sure you stay on track. Other contexts, well, so the other contexts for running Python, as I was telling you, were inside Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook is this way that I'm showing you right here. And that's what I'm pasting this code from this first tab from. So I want this. I guess that's just a normal Control-C. No right-click features because Jupyter Notebook took over the right-click, so any operating system provided keyboard shortcuts you're better off just doing with a keyboard shortcut. So Control-C out of your text boxes. Now, there's a few things missing in order to run this code. One of them is a set of actual URLs to crawl. So I'm going to make a little bit of a change because this is going to be my common library. I like to have an untitled so that I know I'm going to delete it. Where I do that kind of coding. This is going to be experimental coding. ML SEO.IPY. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm creating a library, so I'm going to be working in here almost entirely, and I'm not going to have much test code like that. So my caller, I'll be transposing into here. Okay, so there's external library usage concepts that I'm going to sort of be rolling back while I work on things without much external libraries, except for the third-party ones. So ML SEO.crawl comes local right here. This is just a piece of code I'll be pushing around. So let me take this back. We don't need this one. Close tab. When you do that, there's some trash to clean up. You got the file. You also have it running in memory. So you can shut down that one, which you always want to do if you want to be able to right-click delete it from inside Jupyter Lab. So you can do more house cleaning from inside Jupyter Lab more easily than you could in Jupyter Notebook. However, it does take some knowing what's going on, like which Python things are actually running. So surveyor, that's all I want from there. I just want that. Now the other thing that's going to be going on in here now, in fact, I'm going to close out of that because there's an awful lot in that I just don't want here. And save. And we go over here. Now, the first copy and paste issue rears its ugly head. Remember this one I was hiding here? There's two ways of copying and pasting this over to here, and I have to go across that screen in the middle now. I could turn off Windows transitions and animations, and that would actually become a little faster, but it wouldn't feel this cool. I like those screen animations in Windows. So on that proprietary hardware operating system stuff, yields to power tools, given to the glitz and glamour where it improves the experience, and just don't tie your muscle memory to it. Tie your muscle memory to this other stuff. Jupyter Notebook not really being even part of that tool set. So I go back up here, just to acknowledge, honorable mention to, that would be Jupyter lab/notebook. We must not forget the notebooks. And the browser, general, and Chrome in particular. And a smattering of other must-knows, like one more indent? I guess so, because there's at least two of them. JavaScript. Gotta know it. Kind of like things like PostScript of yore. Now, a few people ever really wrote in PostScript, but it's a specialized hardware input-output operational language, user interaction, just for a laser printer instead of the web browser. But JavaScript is like PostScript. That's why there's so many libraries supporting it. Few people use JavaScript directly, and even those people use jQuery. It's just not the same story as Python, but it's one of those must-knows. And under that same category really is regular expressions, which you'll also hear often as regex. And, there's so many other little sub-stories that go on here. I'm not going to list them all, but, it's because of, the pee in the pool of technology, where, good enough that's in, and you've got to find the love for it, or get off the ride. Or not, or enjoy certain portions of the ride, which is the case with JavaScript. I need to know that now for Puppeteer automation of Chrome, because I've got a predisposition to Chrome in particular, because it plays such a large central role in the field, which is SEO, right? So SEO comes into this whole thing, but I got to wrap up soon what I'm doing here. I feel like I'm reaching a lot of people. Let me check my live cast and prove myself wrong. 2 people, 1 person, concurrent. There's typing. Let's see. I only use Python 3. Good. Python 2 is dead. Everyone has opinions. Jupyter Notebook are difficult for Git, and I will address that, Stuart. Yeah, Jupyter Notebook is difficult for Git. If you really Catalog it out. Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I should check my comments more often. Thank you, Stuart. On the point of Git not being friendly with IPython notebooks, it's true. Yeah, Git isn't great with IPython notebooks, but two things: don't sweat it. Don't worry about the IPYNB's impact on the Git repo. It actually has positive side effects as well. And, you know, at the price of the whole repo's efficiency, of course, but that's okay. Also, you can use VS Code. It's not the enemy. To get Jupyter Lab like features without the .ipynb extensions. Buffed. Float, I'll call it float. It's JLab, JL on PYs. So anyone out there who is looking at this whole surveying the landscape of how to take up Python, what is your execution environment, what is your context for running Python, and I'm going through these different ways, and I tell you, you can do it through via Windows people will understand. Via web browser, via Jupyter Notebook or Lab, via Anaconda install. Okay, and these are both good approaches. You should get it on your machine in this awesome way that Microsoft lets you do it. You should get it on your machine in this awesome way that the Anaconda company previously Continuum.io, I'm still getting used to the change, lets it happen here in the web browser, but also, admittedly, there's this, and I'm not sure what it's doing. It probably must be installing Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab in the background, but there's via VS Code. Technically, it's going to be using one of these other ones some way or another, but it's worth listing it as its own thing, where you get the Microsoft IDE experience plus Jupyter Lab without .ipynb extensions. Now, it's going to be for a lot of people. I see people using it all the time, and Microsoft is doing a brilliant job making that VS Code program appealing to people, including building it into the Anaconda install. So right where you see where to launch Jupyter Lab and Notebook, like the third or fourth one over, is VS Code. So Microsoft has done a wonderful job in probably sponsoring the entire Anaconda endeavor, because things like that come from somewhere. The Microsoft partnership is also what's filling the pockets of the canonical Ubuntu. So thank you, Microsoft, for helping out the right things. They also recently, I keep up on this stuff. Geez, this is like, it's like news stuff, but you know, it's worth saying. GitHub, which is Microsoft, bought NPM. which is Node.js's software repo. People will probably correct me on this, but what? NPM, well, yeah, Node.js, which has this wonderful NPM repo story. You know, not everything has a great software distribution story. Repo software distribution story, like Apple, outside, of course, the iStore, outside this Apple Store. In other words, free and open source software. Now, they do throw the free and open source software world a bone in the form of the Darwin operating system, from which much of the Mac operating system is based upon. However, they don't encourage things that the homebrew system picks up the the slack on. If you're on homebrew, it's interesting to know that on Windows, your homebrew is the Ubuntu software repo. It's a big one. And it has taken care of all those dependencies and like formulas. You don't even need formulas. Formulas not required because everything is so rigorously tested to work with each other. Let's check you crowd out there, see if I'm getting some chatting. Okay, well, I'm down to one concurrent viewer. I'll be going on for a while. So let's get to that crawler. Get to that processing that list. Let's get to that extracting the rest of the projects out of here. So we ls it here. Yeah, I'm working in just ML SEO. So the progression of the concept is that I've got an idea for a repo. It's an extraction from another project, as so many of these things are. Things get lifted from here and get put here and from there to there, so that eventually your libraries get more focused on what they are. And the workflow for me is name the repo, name the first notebook inside of there as the same thing as the repo. You don't ever have to remember what things are called, knowing that you're moving, and I'll create it right here. You're moving towards a PY file, which is really going to be a library. And this is a GitHub repo, so if I were to git status, a whole lot's out of whack with it because I got a git add mlseo.ipymb, git add mlseo.py, and while I'm at it, vim.git more. But before I do, I copy this so I don't have any typing mistakes. I should learn to do this with those echo commands. This is such a common first step. Git add, git ignore, now git status. Right now everything's green. Git commit. First files added. Really useful, right? You can't tell that from it actually being the first commit. But anyway, sanitation and hygiene comes first, right? So you always know where you are. You find where things drop you naturally into. Jupyter Notebook naturally drops you into this location. Windows naturally drops you into this location. So from the location you get naturally dropped into, create a GitHub repo, not a repo, a GitHub folder in which you contain all your repos in a mostly flat way. And now you've got an easy way to get to almost any project you're working on. Nesting is generally your enemy. it flat with a namespace where things don't collide is your friend, thinking about everything in the world as that dict data type that I was telling you about. You'll be learning in Python as well you will. Python, there's oh, I know I typed it up here not long ago. Control B for back, okay. Well, I don't know, so I can search for it, but yeah, you will soon be learning list, dict, and tuples. These are 3 ways of organizing information in your head and in your code, and they have different ways you interact with them. Dictionaries have key value pairs, and that's the one I'm talking about right now, in which you're keeping a large flat directory using keys to get your values out so that you can always find what you need by only remembering a small fragment, the hash. That's similar to the workflow I'm using over here by using a location that's easy to get to, taking a GitHub, in other words, a key value, where the location out is everything inside of that location. So file systems are doing almost the same thing as these data structures that exist inside of programming languages. Well, I go on a slight divergence there because I like to talk about these things. I think they're important for understanding what we're doing here. Check my audio. Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, not terrible. I'll really have to fix that better in the future. Okay, so we've got this in here. This is all now repo-itized, and I want to do the copy and paste lift over here. Now I'm going to do it in the way that's easy to criticize, and but it's the most intuitive to reach for. Merely just dragging on things does do a copy once you right-click on it. So that's all now in my copy buffer. But so are all these numbers because of the way terminal works. Okay, so I have set up hot binded keys. I believe it's function F3 and F4 to get rid of my numbering system. So when I make that little same maneuver there, right click, now my copy buffer. Pretty hacky way to copy and paste things around, but now I've got it local. Right? So it's really not that big of a deal. We're going to have to import a bunch of things left and right, and my crawl function actually does not exist without my link function. And I have to bring my link function here too, because it's one of the first things that actually happens down here. And I might have to create some directories to support it, even though these directories to support things like this is what's going away when I make the crawl concurrent. If I get to that project on this video, the concurrent crawl takes a much lower priority to just resolving a bunch of URLs using this code. So this code here for doing a site crawl will actually give me the list of links that I will use this sort of logic to visit each page, each link found in the crawl, because you find more links than you do pages you visit when you crawl, because links are found on pages. Links to pages you haven't visited yet are found on pages that you have visited. So your list of links goes up at a higher rate than the list of pages you visited. So it's useful after a crawl to just visit every page that you discovered, every link that you discovered, to validate the URL of the landing. That's what this project is. Anyone who's really following this, it takes a long time to get there, but you know, hey, what else are you doing? Okay. Need the links function. Do that the same way. I'll show you the other way you can actually do it now, because, you know, copying and pasting out of this like that kind of annoying. Whereas I could, what file am I? I am in the ML SEO file in this project, I can add a buffer, and I know that I'm in a certain project, so I know if I go up a directory and slash out. Now notice this universality of these paths, these dot dot slash type things. When you're on Windows, there's always an ambiguity, even when you're using Vim. So when you're using Unix-like tools on Windows, you're living with this ambiguity hanging over you, and everything is harder. With the Windows subsystem for Linux, that all changes, and when you do things like add a buffer, dot dot slash, you know it's working correctly because you're really in a Linux environment. I'm going to add a buffer that is going to be represented by a file on this new directory we just made, MLSEO. And I won't do the file we're already editing, it's a notebook, but I will do one that's there called temp, and I'll call that .y. So I've just added that into my buffer. Now my copy and paste is really only between, that's a SERP function, it's a good function, covered in other videos, but the function I want is links. And I yank it, and I go to the next buffer, not insert mode, but I just paste what I copied. And by this, jumping between buffers now, I can just sort of collect up the bits I need. I'm not copying and pasting it between operating systems. It's just ending up in a text file that I can handle in other ways elsewhere, which inevitably will be a copy that relies on the operating system. So is anything really accomplished? Who knows, but I'm going to be copying a lot, so this is why I did this. I might have extra imports in here, but I do want that persist and persists function. I want a list of user agents I can cycle between. What's the logic of cycling those user agents? I want the tuple pseudo object oriented. Boy, do I want to talk about name tuples. And then the links function, which is required for the crawler function. I put the crawler function in there. Oh, the crawler function I put in that other spot, but it's easy to do here. So, whoops. I'll oh, they look identical because yeah, geez. So Control G, which file am I in? MLSEO.py, next, and the temp.py. So this is what I'm copying into, and I'm copying from here. So I'm going to find crawler def crawl. It's easy. Bring that center. Shift V. Smash down on the Y, although I could have probably done that in a better way. Y for yank. That was smashed down on the J, not smashed down on the Y. I was thinking ahead. J to arrow down, essentially. The N, Shift G, O, get a few extra lines in, escape out, paste, have some space between the crawl function and the link function, and save out, quit, no longer in Vim, but now you will find I have a temp file here from which copying and pasting will be no problem because it's all inside Jupyter Lab. So I think I do want all this local over here. That was just to have a tricky way to copy and paste from in order to essentially do what I did here that other way. Now with a whole bunch more. Save. And you'll see the Git repo will know that an extra file is there. Don't want anymore. This has been modified by how much. And it shows you. You also see why IPython notebooks are not particularly Git friendly, except I say, to heck with it. You can track the evolution of an IPython notebook just the same way as you can a .py file. It's got all this extra stuff in there because it's JSON format, but again, so what? Git commit hold functions over from other repo. Not in a working state yet. Neither have I connected this to GitHub yet. There is no ML SEO repo on GitHub yet. This is just for undo, redo code snapshots on my local machine right now, which will all be part of the history when I push it up to GitHub, but it's not in there right now. Now let's get this working and let me crawl a site using this crawler function so that I can get to this concurrency function down here. This is a fun work session. This is one of the most fun work sessions I've ever done. And I knew I was on the verge of this awesome stuff, and I thought, oh, what a great opportunity to test my chops at this YouTube live streaming thing. Concurrent users, it's 2, so there's always someone out there. Goes up, it goes down, but the likes are going up. This is a good sign. DVR is enabled, so this is all going to be out on YouTube as one probably very long video. I'm going to go over my lunch break, but in the spirit of creating this feeling of connectedness in these difficult times we're in, I am just fine going through my lunch break, finishing out a project to talk about this very needs to be told story of Python concurrency. One of the many stories of Python concurrency or parallelism. There is an underlying fact here. Underlying fact that I hate, strongly dislike. All the APIs for concurrency and parallelism that I have ever seen. I need to work with the Go language, or I know. And I know, history. I know a lot of computer history. And I know about Erlang. What other concurrency languages that have weird side benefits? Clojure, JURE. There's a whole bunch of stuff that, has better concurrency stories. JavaScript itself. I know that there's great different concurrencies and different really deeper stories of what concurrency is underneath. What's being implied is the lack of blocking between two things happening at the same time. Like it or not, that means, multi-core style, multi-core or multi-machine, because, your work can be distributed over different physical machines. Style, parallelism. Real parallelism versus non-blocking I/O. Achievable on just really fast single CPU hardware via techniques such as task switching or preemptive or shared multitasking. Fairly shared multi would be multiplexing, really. you'll hear different multis in there. Multitasking, multiplexing. You can have multitasking on a single CPU system by just freezing states and switching between different temporarily held frozen states. It's sort of round robin. So on truly multitasking. Hardware. And then there's the different issues of how to access all this stuff. There's processors versus threads, and it all gets very complex. And Python makes you deal with that complexity. Python generally makes you deal with that complexity. There's also a whole side story about the GIL, but I'm not going to get into it because you'll hear it talked about so many other places. But trust me, Python parallel processes or multiplex or whatever has you just as well as any other language. It's just there's a lot of ways to do it, and all the APIs are disappointing except one. Except one. And give credit where it's due. This whole for humans movement, this whole APIs for humans. The guy who started it, it's almost a cultural thing in Python. It's like a Python's subculture, because things get in the standard library to die, is what's said. So the person representing where things don't go to die is Kenneth Wrights. Request is HTTP for humans. This is how people generally do HTTP work in Python, even though it's not part of the standard library. In true Kenneth Wright format, you'll see me emulate his style here and there. He obviously put work into these descending slopes of why things are beloved, using both things like language like beloved in tech and things like carefully planned shortening lines. I mean, this guy after my own heart, or me after his heart, or what, but you see habits like that I have in here. Pep 8 be damned, just because it looks better and the story can be told, but he puts the human before the edge case that needs to be supported. The standard library puts the edge case, supporting the edge case, before the human that needs to be using that API. And that's where you get the underlying libraries like URL lib. I think they're up to 3. I forget. You even need to know the version numbers of the underlying standard library components that are being used, and why it's not using certain things that other people are using, and all the interwoven stories. But Kenneth Wright spares you from knowing about that by having one that's ultimately made for humans, and it's really easy to do this stuff. So he's not mentioning concurrency here, but much of this is really about requests being concurrent. Python requests concurrent, and most searching will lead you down this path of finding G requests. Of course, I'm knowing what I'm looking for, so I can search in the search results. But for people who've gotten used to the requests API, HTTP for humans under Python, and are ready to go asynchronous, and have maybe found G requests, because this all leads to G requests. And have mixed success, because the examples that are out there are not really the best examples for getting the performance out of this thing that you can get, where, for example, getting the performance of in about 10 seconds loading retrieving the content from over 100 URLs using this general layout, but with a slight change to to both lines. Really, I've changed both lines here. And so I'm sort of showing a hard to find the documentation for secret about how to turn currency much faster and make it appropriate for things like crawlers, where things are being fetched over and over again from the same site, a site that has the ability to throttle you based on your IP. So that's where I'm at right now. Still no one's saying stuff here. But to concurrent users, people are really sticking with me. What do you know? Okay, so let's get to it. Let's get to it. I copied and pasted these library components in here. Now, because we're in this wonderful Jupyter Lab environment, we can start to do these types of features that I know should be here, like everything that is static and I know is just going to work down to here. I should be able to split the cell on that. Split cell is Control Shift minus. Control Shift minus. You know, now I can run that cell. Nothing there should be choked on. See, the star went to a 1. So all that's run now, and I have all this stuff set up. Now you might say, why this extra step of this named tuple? Well, as I'm crawling through sites, I don't want to throw away the piece of metadata of the rel tag. Rel equals, what is where rel equal? No follow and stuff. That's of interest to me. So for every URL, instead of just making it a pure URL story in the crawler, which it could be, for this one piece of metadata I want to include, I change a link into a named tuple data type, which is very much like object-oriented notation. You've got parameters. You'll see it as we go on. But a link object now has a URL property and a rel property. And rel is the field stuffed contents of the rel equals field. It can actually be multiple things, and the beautiful soup queries to find it, return it as a list. I flatten it so that it doesn't ruin my wonderful named tuple key-like nature to other things. That'll come up later. And I actually control the sort order and the alphabetizing when I unfold field stuff so that it remains a string candidate. Cool. Okay. So this next thing is going to load the links function into memory. I should be able to just point it to an arbitrary website. It comes back with a list of links from that site using beautiful soup, local LXML extractor, doing a few exceptions of types of links to crawl, because everything to slash is your home page. Everything that is just this is a buffer, a filler space for other AJAX calls and stuff. JavaScript being executed mail link. I might create an inclusion list instead of an exclusion list at some point in the future, make this code less wordy and less fragile. However, Control Shift minus, I have another thing that should harmlessly be able to be run and put in memory. And I hit A for above, put a field here above, and I should be able to say links equals link. Now, inevitably something's going to break, so don't get your hopes up too much. But let's crawl something. Let's crawl my old feeble, gotta update it, https://mikelev.in. Oh yeah, link is, what did I call my function? Links. It's plural, so I can't use this here. I have a name collision. Link list. It executed just fine. I hit A for above. I can look directly at linked list, and there are all the URLs that were found in a crawl of my site, and you can start to see what I mean now by there is a metadata of what was in rel equals remains, and it gets field stuffed into there so that I don't have a Python a mutable object in a named tuple key, which I found doesn't work out very well. It's better to field stuff if you lowercase and alphabetize your stuff here. You could get a duplicate if you use this in a list, which I think I returned this as a list. No, it's just a list, well, a set. Okay, set and list. It is a list, right? So it's a list. There could be duplicates. Don't go on tangents. Let's get through this. And now we've got a list. Now we've got a list. That's what I'm saying. Now, if you just wanted the URLs and order didn't matter and you wanted them deduplicated, that's where list comprehension comes in. You can get rid of the list of tuple-like nature and just show the URLs. X for X. So if you're ever wondering about list comprehension, the main trick is put square brackets around a list and put X for X in, and you get the same list. But now it's exposed internals where you can do stuff like, because it's a named tuple, I can say x.url, see, field names. Now there's my list of links. You know what a list of links is really useful for? Fetching them all at once. Forget about this crawler for a minute. We're going to minimize that crawler. Yes, while there is crawling in our future, grabbing all the links off of a single URL, is a fairly good starting point building a list of links that can be visited. Now, you're going to see how slow my web server is. This is not going to be best case scenario. This is probably not back-ended by any content distribution network, except these sites are. Some of these are that I link to probably will be, but my site is not. So we double check whether G request is in the original import. I do believe it is. And this is going to create, I should go through this line by line because think you get the fact that I have a whole list of URLs here while sharing nothing proprietary. And I'm going to visit each one of those pages to make sure those links aren't broken and everything. So I'm going to make a one-to-one correspondence between these. So I don't need that metadata in this case, so I'm going to wash this list a little bit. You wash a list. Well, there's a few things you do. And make them unique instead of square brackets. You can make this a set. Can't be more than one of the same kind now and there, even as it iterates. There's other ways to do this. This is just the most one-step-ish. List comprehension, well, you set comprehension. There's another thing for dictionary comprehension. You might actually think that that would be the syntax for dictionary comprehension, but you got to keep separate in your mind now where the curly brackets are used for dictionaries and where the curly brackets are used for sets. Things are changing a bit in the world, or it's an opinionated language, and these are some of its opinions. Guys out there, 2 concurrent viewers. Oh my God! I wonder if I can really see who they are. Say something. Okay. So, anything more we can do? Well, sure. Sorted. And so now it's in some sort of alphabetical order. Okay? And now to take the snapshot of that, this was linked list. We'll make this, visit us. Sometimes I use an underscore. Sometimes I don't. I think of it as, Greek names. It's visit us. So now it's here. There. This contains that all sorted and alphabetized stuff. Control Shift minus split that, because it's worth showing you that this executes instantaneously, and I'm going to walk through what this does, and this is really the super important step in the entire thing. Concurrency? Where's my concurrency? Well, thanks to Kenneth Wright's and his ability to make APIs for humans, I am able to get concurrency with one simple line. So you'll hear with this type of concurrency or opportunity for parallelism, which we'll talk about more, and how things like Dask come into play, where you get true parallelism and you wanted to map this project against a larger set of separate physical machines that could run this job and reduce it to the result set. There is an underlying Hadoopy MapReduce model here that is completely abstracted away through a fairly brilliant API for making you forget you're dealing with concurrency. This is instantaneous because it sets up the job. Here, using these you're using parentheses, it goes to the extra precaution of making sure nothing in here has to execute until it has to execute. Kenneth Wright's made the example of setting up the job into a forward-only, one direction, doesn't know what it has until it visits it, generator. Python generators fit into the concurrency story, to the Python concurrency / parallelism story. It's not too soon to forget about, how do I want to say that? It's important to remember that it is both a concurrency and a parallelism story. Not blocking your I/O, and having some mechanism like task switching at very least, preemptive or equitable multiplexing at worst, versus multiple machines available, multi-core, multi-machines. They are different stories. You're talking about both stories here. Python makes you think about that. Because you don't know what's on the other end yet, a Python generator is a good way to do it because it's not sitting in memory until it needs it. It knows to keep a small compressed version of what will expand to become something. And then as it expands to become something, it doesn't try to expand to become that entire thing at once. It's like reading one line of a trillion-line text file at a time. Generators, powerful. Kenneth Wright is telling us to use them for the Python concurrency or parallelism story in a step that doesn't really do much work. Whew, a long way of saying this URLs is not defined for URL and URL, right? Visit us. Anticlimactic, but not so much, right? Saw how fast it went to 13. Put on lucky 13 the day before Pi Day. I loved this year's progression of numbers. Friday the 13th, Pi Day 3.14. We had a pie here. We thought ahead on our shopping trip, and we enjoyed pie on Pi Day. And wow, right? We're sitting on top of this. This is the big moment. I'm building it up. Now, a word or so before it, and Control Shift minus, break these into steps. That wasn't a good place to do it. RESP, CT, find out what it means. But we can execute that. There's no harm in Shift Enter on a before. Time and date not defined. Just date time I need. I think so. And there's no harm in re-executing stuff like this over and over, even down to including all that. It's of the REPO environment. It's because it's Jupyter Notebook-ish in origin, which is IPython in origin. So many stories here. I could hit the above. Whoops. See? I believe I just deleted it. Hit it. Undo cell operation. Did I hide it? Did that one for sure. That's the crawl. That's the output of that, which I hit. No, I guess I undid it. I think I must have hit U for undo. But I can redo that a little more carefully here. I hit split cells, Control Shift minus, Control Shift minus. Oh, you got an arrow key down. New rhythm of my stuff. Boy, I don't want to have to commit this all to muscle memory. But look at it, right? It's the brave new world out there. You don't have to commit it. This kind of tool is where you begin. Why do I advocate Linux, Python, Vim, and Git with an honorary mention towards things like Jupyter Lab and Notebook? Because I don't expect you to jump into Vim as your text editor to get started with Python on Linux. I expect you to, what's the plan? What's the plan? The plan is to ease into text-based Linux via WSL2 on your Windows 10 machine. To learn Python via the Anaconda Jupyter Lab install first. Vim. Start having small baby step successes. Git. To learn a few commands so you can use GitHub and use GitHub from Linux from WSL2, right? Okay, that's the plan. I showed you how fast this was and how it wasn't really doing anything because it's creating a generator because of these parentheses. Start to learn to think in Python. This is your Python first video and you somehow joined in with me. Let me show you that there are lists. There are lists. To bar dictionaries useful. But you plug the key in foo, you get out bar. Plant the key in dictionaries, you get out useful. Dictionary can be set equal to a name. That name can have the same key as we were using up there. Key value pairs, dictionaries. And tuples, trust me. There, backslash. There's so many ways to skin these cats. I don't think that's it. Interchangeable quote types. Useful. Tuples look exactly like lists, but where you can append blah. Now that list it's really interesting. I'm doing that in real time to something that doesn't exist in memory, so there's no way to even display that. But there's a list in memory that has no file handle to it, or no handle to it, no reference to it. This is almost a joke as to why variables are references in Python. They are not variable names. Someone out there will appreciate sort of jokes here. That's set to none. Okay, so ref dot append blah ref as blah on the list. So there's API things. This is where the mutable of immutable objects comes into. A mutable object can be modified. You can't do that with a tuple, and that makes a lot of difference. And blah doesn't like it, and no attribute append. How about add, which sets have no attribute add? So you can't change the number of things in a tuple. And if you actually had a named tuple and you had a field name for each, something equals something, you can start to see how the usefulness of tuples comes into play. And lists of tuples are like the perfect data format to represent Excel lists or data frames or matrices of all sorts. Anyway, I think I'm diverging a little bit there. I'm holding off on the really exciting part that's coming up, which is the applying of the MapReduce step. This stuff in here is really exciting. I feel I lost my way a little bit. But you folks out there, if you're just joining in, you need to know about lists, tuples, and dictionaries and why each of them is so freaking awesome. Now I'm going to delete all that because that's just the nature of Python. Python is expressiveness. It's not coding. Yeah, sure, it's coding, but it's just like talking. So I'm telling you that I have this, which is instantaneous in nature. URLs is not defined. I guess I could do it. Visit us. There. So we now have a Rex object in memory. And I know from the presence of the parentheses around it, which I spent a lot of time telling you represents tuples, is actually representing a generator. And you will have noticed elsewhere that the curly brackets that generally represent a dictionary sometimes represent a set. This is because these symbols can be used in places in the language where, because syntactically there will not be a collision, it is permissible. And an area where languages can be expanded. That happens a lot. Let's see if you guys are saying stuff. Well, someone out there still watching. Pretty amazing, right? And the likes is up to 6, so 6 people have come and gone. Or maybe like, oh, I'll catch up on this later. He does PVR when it can be fast forwarded over at double speed. Okay. So now let's do it. Let's work our way through this incredible concurrency story. We have our generator. We have our before variable, but I'm doing this only because I'm going to show you why I'm going to merge it back around the resp. Before is a date timestamp. It's the now moment. If I were to do that again, you'll notice this 13 and the 8.2 will be different. It's 33 and 8.1, microseconds, seconds, minutes, and on up to the year we're in. And the point is, I'm going to do an after minus a before, and to show the number of seconds it required to execute. So it really doesn't make a sense to have these. Now let's do the reverse. Let's get rid of the place where I display it. That's the E key. Before, the merge cells is Shift N. Okay, you can't have your cursor showing. So you get into the habit of hitting the escape key first. So this is a way in which Jupyter Lab is much like Vim. A habit of hitting the escape key before doing an action in which you cannot be in that other mode. I did Control M, I went Shift M. There. Do Shift M again. And now the three things I want together are indeed together. And this is going to be the calculation and the printing of how long it takes. So why keep us in suspense? We do 2 more Shift M's. Those belong in with that, but now you know exactly what it's doing. You're sitting on a generator. The generator is being fed to a map request step. I have a size equals 10. I'm glad I'm doing this a step at a time. This is forcing the most requests that could happen at once against a single source to be 10, so that you don't send all page requests at the same time to a web server, because your machine is that much faster on making requests than it could be against answering them. I think that 10 is too small. I did that because I wanted to test that parameter. That is not the precautionary parameter that makes this work so well. This is stream equals false says after the request is over, close the connection. There's another way of saying this. This is the way of saying this that puts it into the API where optional parameters are possible because of how the get method is written of the gRequests package. gRequest, written by Kenneth Wrights, has a get method. That get method has multiple parameters of which we don't know everything, but we can look at the library. But now you can see why when you go to the gRequests, nobody knows. Like the performance using this library is so low out there in the wild because they have failed to find a Stack Overflow entry that gives us this. That is still in the request object, so it's a double precaution against going out of hand. All the requests are going to be fired off. Nothing's loaded in memory until it starts doing the mapping process. The built-in functioning of the gRequest package will be doing the reduce part of it. So how is this concurrency? How is this concurrent? Well, it's going to wait till everything comes back, then it's going to marshal all the results across all those different things that it mapped it out to. It will reduce it to a single answer, which will be in the rest. Ooh. Okay, without further ado, right? Boom. Ah, how dramatic gRequest, how anticlimactic gRequest is not. Oh, and this is an important step. Ooh-wee. Do I stream this? Or do I do it from the web? I do it from the web. First thing, move import requests to the top, because there's going to be some order sensitivity. Next thing is do it by just attempting to import gRequests, just like that, the way one would expect. Now it's in memory, and I should be able to, by all expectations, just go here and do this. Hey, maybe it works, or maybe it gets caught in that forever loop that I have encountered before. There's a danger of a forever loop, and I may not be seeing it. but we'll give it a few seconds and show you why, even with all this precaution, concurrency can get a bum rap under Python. No matter how elegant the APIs are, there's still some little gotcha lurking around, and this obviously is taking much longer than the so little time that it should. Like a 10-second thing. Now, granted, it is against my site, which is not on the fastest web host. I'm on one of these cPanel things. 61 seconds, actually not bad against my site. 61 seconds is on the fast side. Now, what was I talking about that made me think this wasn't going to work? There's a big monkey patch going for G requests, in which has to be loaded before in memory anything else. And I'm going to put that monkey patch in as part of this video, even though already you've seen part of a successful example here. This number of pages, what is the number of pages? Oh, by the way, I have the Rex object populated, which is its own awesome story here. But length of visit us is 78. So we visited 78 pages in 61 seconds. Not the greatest in the world, but not bad considering how slow my mikelev.in site actually is. But I'm going to see if we can't make it go a little bit faster. Let me check in with users. No one's typing at me. Oh, someone unliked. Okay, it went from 6 to 5. Very interesting. One concurrent user. I guess I'm leading this on too much. I'm stretching this out too much. Well, either way, showing you super valuable, easy way to concurrency. Let's do the monkey patch. See if we can't get this number go down. It's the ratio between number of pages, number of pages, and how long it took to fetch all those pages. And I'm working against mostly my site, so that I'm polite to the out there. There's a handful of other sites scattered throughout the Visit Us link, but there's no harm in having a couple of other things. Code showing output. So, there is our, this is, so that import happened here, but this whole error comes up, which is what leads you down the monkey patch path, and might just be down to the where it is suppress warnings. Nope, monkey patching. Yeah. The one that actually has this Curious George comment in there. Working. Yeah, this is it. Curious George one. Go over here. We put that above where this stuff is imported. Don't do that import there, but we do requests after it. Now we hit the escape key. We hit 0, 0. Which will restart the Linux kernel, because when you change the order of stuff that is actually order sensitive, these Python things stay resident in memory so robustly, especially in these REPL environments, you're never going to get order sensitive stuff corrected. Start the execution code session you're in, which never stops in a REPL environment, or the whole kernel virtual machine you're in, which is very effectively done with escape 0, 0. Now when I run this one over, see it goes to 1 as its next thing, and there will be some things going here, but it's only this millisecond timer resolution warning, which is really not that bad. I could suppress that warning. but I don't think I'm going to. It doesn't hurt things. It's mission accomplished now. Get the links function back in memory. We rebuild our links list. We convert that to a for list of links. We show you that it is in fact that. Minimize it so we don't have to look at its ugliness again. Create the generator of the rex object. We don't need to confirm it's a generator. I'm sure you trust me. Now we do that step. GRequest is not refined. So the import that happened here is not the full import. Not even the import at all. I was wrong about getting the part from G event it needs, but the G requests still needs to be loaded. But now that order sensitivity stuff is not too bad because technically it loaded after requests, but I don't, well, maybe a minute. Double escape, double zero, restart, boom, 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 boom. Generator and concurrent URL requests of 78 URLs. This is after the monkey patch that eliminates endless HTTP requests in the background silently without you knowing, and could have an effect on the number of seconds the overall thing takes. It could also make it take forever. Last time we had 60-some seconds. If we come up with the same 60-some seconds, it's still really mission accomplished because not the greatest number in the world is acceptable against MikeLev.in. I'm not going to hold these crappy speed things against it, but I can show you some different use cases where I crawl sites other than my own, things that have CDNs, content distribution network partners behind them, and show you just how fast this concurrency thing can be. It actually got slower, 78 URLs in 71 seconds. Okay, so instead of this website, yeah, how that coronavirus thing, right? There's a wonderful website there. They could use a little more attention. There's no harm sending more attention and traffic these guys' way. You want to know more from the Washington Post? Okay, we'll call their site going out. Bam. That'll take a moment because this is built non-sequential. This is instantaneous. See that? Oh, 0, unable to crawl out from there. Very interesting. Get to learn a lot, don't you? When the links function returns nothing, it's because something about the site made it not easily crawled. And one can understand why a site like that would do that. Yes, New York Times. Start to throw a little traffic there, add this, their URL to make sure I'm using the right URL. See what kind of crawl we can do against a newspaper like that. Yeah, okay, so there's a list of URLs, and it's clearly going to be back-ended, going to be network supported by some fabulously great CDN. So let's see how big that is. I know it's out of order. I'll put this here. 133 links. I'm tempted, oh, that'll probably be copyright violation, won't it? Oh, YouTube. I'm tempted to take a look over here to see who's here, but I want to just wait because this is exciting to me. So some interesting things here is the user interface is never locked up while you're waiting. 34 seconds, 133 URLs visited. That was taken from a quick crawl of the New York Times homepage. It's not even a crawl, it's just the link function. This link function it just pulls down a bunch of stuff, does a little bit of a avoidance of file types it doesn't want to see. Again, I should switch it to be a little smarter, same with here. But this will evolve over time. It's accomplishing the 80-20 rule very well. And fetching 133 URLs in 34 seconds is pretty amazing. Now, when you say fetching those URLs, well, the story isn't quite complete here. And I'm also going to turn this into a function, seeing how well it worked. But before I turn it into a function, I really ought to show you the super exciting thing that's going on here. Kenneth Wright wrote this object, so in his solution to providing concurrency for URL requests is to populate a list. Notice the list, even that is opinionated. He chose a list of response objects, which may turn out to be not good. I've seen this with response objects being, none, nothing coming back, and also response code 400s. This is a nice clean one. Way to go, New York Times. Now, I remember that list comprehension stuff. Because it's a list and not a generator, it means you don't have to worry about going through it once in one direction. You can go forwards, backwards, and do all your list comprehension stuff. So prior to list comprehension, having an object that was stuffed full of other objects was an issue. How do you get to it? But because, by the way, for item in RESP, this is one of the ways people traditionally did it. Print, type of the, or you can just print the item. An attempt to print the item will, in fact, print the REPPR, and it'll also be that response thing you're looking at. You get the RESPR, so it's really looking at that without square brackets, which is fine. But isn't it nicer to just put square brackets around this and do x for x in? And now, the same thing as printing the list without iterating through it, because it is iterating through it, exposing the internals. Exposing the internals, including URL. This is the resolved list of URLs, and maybe I jumped ahead before letting you know that the entire web page is contained, all the view source of the web page is contained in here. I would, excuse me, we're live. I would show you the text of the web page, but that would be insane. Instead, I'll show you the size of the text of each of those web pages, taking my word for it that this count here represents web pages, the HTML of which we're sitting on top of. Hence, no longer my need to pickle data during crawls, because whatever's being done in MapReduce is holding what it needs around until it marshals everything and could return this Uber object that we have named RESP response, a list of requests response objects. Type, we will say type. See, it's requests response object. It means it's got the whole web page. But what we're interested in right now is sort of landing page expansion. It's a x.url. Because it's a list, and it took as its input likewise a list, rex equals, so when we map reduced this, these recs that went in, it was a forward only generator, but it had a slot for each thing, and it's going to be probably same shape as it does. So let's turn URLs of the response objects into its own list that we can compare size and stuff to visit us, and perchance zip them together as a dictionary. So this URL comes in, this correctly resolved URL comes out, which is what this project really is about, to compare this list of URLs from after the pages were visited to the ones that you thought to try and visit as a result of a crawl-like project where the URLs might not in fact be the correct ones. So how can we compare this list to this list? Visit us. Visited us. Should I be clever? Clever, it's outside. Clever. Good. Visited. I'll just do visited because that visually looks different enough from visit us to visited. That'll work. Now we can really easily do a length of visited. 133. Well, that looks familiar. 133. Zip. Visit us. Visited. Python is profoundly cool. The zip object. Dict. Zip object. Huh? Why don't we take the left half of the zip together object and make that the key and key value pairs for the object on the right? Don't mind if I do. So an attempt to load this URL resulted in the actual loading of this URL, value pairs. The attempt to load this URL actually resulted in the very same URL coming out. So not all URLs go through redirectors or shorteners or cloakers or what have you. But when they do, we will know it. So let's see the kind of stuff you can do at this point, in a key value pair thing like that. This is, visit us, visited. This is a dictionary of expanded landing pages. So this is LP dict. It's a landing page dict, LP dict. So we could do this with list comprehension, but it's easier thinking through some of these issues for a link, because it's a link that's been found in visit us. Print. We want to see if there's differences. We'll do it in a way where we can do it really easily visually. So this is the discovered link. It's a link, and right beneath it will be now there's a dictionary now. So we're printing the dictionary, but putting in as its dictionary value a key, which is now this guy here. And because we want visual stacking paired, we'll just print an empty line underneath. Now it's going to pair them, and we can visually scan down, knowing that the original URL is the top one and the one we're interested in is the bottom one. Now you may, observe in all this, am I doing, coding? Is this coding? Let's stop for a reflect. This is my lunch break still, right? Well, it's the most important work I have to do, and I've got to get this done. So why not share the parts that can be shared and create some content of a sort that keeps losing thumbs ups it achieved, apparently. Well, okay, still one concurrent user. Very interesting. Someone out there is watching. I'm pretty sure it's not me. I'm not watching myself on my phone, YouTube Live, so maybe someone is sticking with me through all this. This is amazing. Is it you, Stuart? Or Alp64? Oh, you completely abandoned Mac. Is that Python 2 is dead? Yeah, so have I completely abandoned Mac? That's an interesting question. No. Okay, so since I'm pontificating, there's going to be a couple of things here. Am I coding? And did I abandon Mac? No. I miss it every day. Microsoft's current maneuvers, are only sincere because they help the bottom line. I know that. Jobs only based Macs on Unix, Step OS, long stories. Because they provided a convenient shortcut. Won over developers. But Mac is still deeply proprietary. Even the free and open source story on Mac isn't great. Homebrew. Yet it's real Linux, real Unix, and that felt good until I was on real. That felt better. No homebrew. Everything learned. Ubuntu, Debian. I worked here. Applied. Well. Good. Mac still feels okay, but until you have a real repo system, FOSS repo system on the Mac, official, mainstream, you're hacking. I hate that. Not hacking Linux on Windows. I can go Linux entirely anytime. Cold turkey. No turnkey. That's almost a Freudian slip. Cold turkey. Few withdrawal systems. That is the same as it was with Mac. So yeah, I've moved back and forth a number of times over the years, including on the Amiga computing platform and stuff. I've been around the block a few. Heck. 2 concurrent users, 5 likes. This is interesting. I shouldn't be so self-aware. I'm going for the long term here. I'm going for a good published video where I just don't edit because I don't have to. I can think through a whole project like this, create a new repo in GitHub, which I haven't really gotten to. I haven't made this an actual repo in GitHub yet, but I have done the important part of this landing page expansion, such as it were. And I can compare the befores and afters of the, the trick is I'm always going to use the afters. The afters are the expanded landing pages. I went through the work of doing this, but now I've got to make this official so that everything that happened happens real fast, just like building the links function. Now, link list equals links function with the URL. Now that you have a good link list, which I sort of stripped down to just the URLs, which is fair. I don't have to the thing that has the meta data back into this next function I write. But we don't need to show this, and we do want to trust that this all works now and just build it back. It's nice to take a snapshot. People are like, oh, well, you know, IPython notebooks don't work well with GitHub or Git, but they really do. Git commit about to turn current URL fetching into a function. Git push. Oh, there's nothing to push, right? It's not in GitHub. Let's put it in GitHub. I'll share this stuff with you, right? So, I always bring myself into the Pipulate repo at GitHub, knowing that it's a public repo that people are allowed into. Then I this to, I use this to do new repo. So again, nothing is given away. Working in super sanitary mode. And McLevin slash is ML SEO. Wow, McLevin slash ML SEO. This could become bigger than Pipulate if I do this right. A library soon will be an SEO library for common tasks. Common tasks. Soon will be a Python SEO library for common tasks such as SERPs, crawls, C connect, querying, etc. Create Git repository, public. It will give instructions before and after. When I say Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, this is some of the type of stuff I'm advocating. Now, Git is hard under Windows. Git is hard under the command line console under Windows. The first part of that Python story is always going to push you towards these windows. Typing Python. Getting this awesome version, admittedly best most current version, from Python.org, the CPython standard specification, and then starting to work out of this C / kind of Windows location. Don't. Am I working out of a Windows script host? Windows script host. Windows subsystem for Linux command line instead. Their command line is a command line that will be with you through the rest of your life. Never feel like backslashing anyone ever again. So that line, add the remote origin. So not simply a matter of pushing like I just tried to do a second ago. You have to git push -u origin master. So let me do it before and after. Clear, git push. You have to set your upstream origin master. Git push, set upstream origin master. So there's one before and after, but here is another before and after. This very page, which is the page for the repo, was before instructions on how to do it, and is after the first bits of code. Still have a py there. Yeah, that's empty because I just used the touch command to create it. Stuff here is going to eventually end up over here, but until it is, I'm going to keep everything local and work out of it here. Now people say the Jupyter Notebook is not great, or Jupyter Lab isn't great under GitHub, I say that's pretty great. Look at that. Look at it rendering that notebook. Ideal. You got a real snapshot history of this project. You're not just looking for this purist, here's my repo, edit by edit on my .py files. Getting the kind of REPL feeling out of the code as you go is completely legitimate as well. Did that. It's a GitHub repo that you can look at. And I'm getting ready to turn this into a function here. And this is where that Shift M comes into play, right? Because on this, you delete out the stuff that you don't really want anymore. But the stuff that's left, wait a minute, maybe I do want that. What did I just do? I deleted the length of something. I just want to Shift M down. I'll delete lines out. Right? So, careful where your pointer is when you Shift M. And these two belong together. This is the separate defined function. This is just a bunch of imports and some preparatory work. And this is what's going to become the function. So we just simply all right for this to have side effect output. Things that print from inside a function. Keeping these print commands around inside the function. See, I'm not printing the before. Oh yeah, no, just how many seconds it takes at the end. That's great. This is a print. That was a Jupyter Notebook print. And this we certainly. This is going to be the return value of the function. So to turn a piece of code like this into a function, you define it as a function and expand. Visit us. Colon at the end. Int. Return without parentheses the return value of the function, value that is here in scope. Before you start using something like this, it is always good to kernel, restart, and clear all outputs. I do this all the time by hitting escape and 0, 0 and ignoring numbers. But for the sake of this sort of experimentation here with everybody, it's good to know that that doing it with kernel, restart, and clear all outputs is actually much more desirable because it just looks nicer when you start running. Run. You don't need this, right? Although we are going to use that as an input for this function, so we will use it. And old crawl is not necessary, that's still hidden there. But this one here just puts the function in memory, still hasn't executed it, but now, whereas when it's not a function, it would have just executed that code, it is instead sitting around waiting to be executed by its function name being used, containing the input values. Now you want to make sure you don't just do it like that, or again, there will be no handle, there will be no reference to the returned value. A value is being returned. You want that value to be returned into something set equal to that, which is a dictionary. It's, again, LP dict. It's not the worst thing in the world to use the same nomenclature here as you use here, but sometimes people will say there's the possibility of memory leak or memory leak, but variables leaking outside of scope. It's generally not the case with functions. They can go in but not out. But at any rate, I'll do LPD equals this. And a side effect will be the printing of how long it takes. We'll have an asterisk, and it'll just sit there. And this is concurrency. The API for concurrency is being abstracted away through highly Pythonic constructs. The generator, the list comprehension. I can see quite a few things going on here. This is generator in combination with list comprehension, using properties that are somewhat hidden. 36 seconds is what it took. So this is now a landing page dictionary. It can be used exactly the same way in that same type of loop for URL in visit us print URL. Okay, this gets back to the point as to whether I'm really coding here. Yeah, I'm coding, but you're coding when you talk. You're coding when you think. You're coding when you talk. You're coding when you think. You're coding one way when it's so precise that machines can follow your instructions. You're coding another way when other humans like you have some notion of what you're talking about. All kinds of coding. While I am indeed coding, or technically encoding, coding my thoughts, I am coding more like thinking and talking and writing than what you might think of as programming or coding in the career sense. Bro. A lot of programming out there. So, my point is that thinking in Python is very opinionated. Most of the cool, right ways best. So much so, it's on its way to replacing Perl. Greatly made the web possible. And Nix shell script, and probably not JavaScript, but that's okay. Try thinking in JavaScript. Like I think in Python here. It's about thinking clearly and being a better person, more capable person. Well, can hardly take stuff away from you when it's in your head as one of your built-in assets. This is very much like that. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I might have to put some error checking and stuff in here, but I'll be moving this over to the PY file, maybe in this very same video, right? Why not just keep streaming? Let me check on things like my audio feed. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Not great, but it's no worse than when I started out. Check on my audience. Hey, one person. Okay, there's still, as always, one person there. Let me think. Probably a good place to wind it down. Maybe I just do that final step here of no, this delineates pretty clearly. The crawler is going to be my next video. I created a expand. Should probably be more explicit with this. Sometimes you live with a nickname. Visit URLs, landing page URLs. It is visited landing pages, visit landing, turn landing page. You need a list of URLs you want to visit. Def, visit. You have visited. You haven't expanded it. You visited it. Visit those pages. Yeah. I could return much more than just those landing pages. Actually throwing out a tremendous amount of information by just returning the expanded landing pages. But you know what? That's keeping focus. There's arguments here about you could attempt to just try and fetch just the head of the, using instead of the get method, the head method of the pages you're trying to fetch. But that does not ensure full landing page expansion, as I know very well from the requests library. This is using it alone without concurrent. So I think I'm a little bit rambling here, but this is where I'm going to by git commits visit function to concurrently resolve landing page URLs. Git push. Out there following along and want to see this in some way more than this YouTube video, go to my GitHub repository. Go to github.com/Miklevin, MIKLEVIN, LSEO, and it's repo. Want to see what the notebook looks like? Into it. Probably make your agent lines shorter or external, or do something to like mix them up a bit. This is most like a holding pattern. Copy to some agents from the web, but I should make it pretty, especially if people are going to be looking at format. I have a bunch of includes in here that probably are not needed or not used just yet. Actually, sure, I'll go through this and clean up. Slight more PEP 8 compliance. Maybe suppress the warning that comes out of this. Yeah. And if this isn't exactly accomplishing what I want to accomplish, this is expansion function. This is the crawler I'm going to be rewriting in my next video in order to be to use the concurrency raw. Started out. Not bad to have a whole crawler this much code. It's not really a whole crawler, it's a one-click depth crawler. But I'm going to be able to make it even more elegant with this new thing, because this first step is going to be so much faster for link and links that I have produced this puppy. Much Alright, thanks for joining me. Hope to stream to you again soon. And if any of you really stuck with me through this, thank you so much. The education in here is really quite invaluable, if I do say so myself. It's now sort of hidden or protected behind these 2-hour long videos where I tackle these problems and pontificate as I go. But Yeah, that is what quality content is sometimes about. This is how this stuff works. The stuff that's most worth accessing is sometimes the hardest to access. So for those of you tuning in later, watching at times speed, thank you also. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe.